Hello and welcome to Lead with the MCAN. I'm Nagam Alsamari, and today my guest is Margaret Blohm. Margaret, public relations consultant for a small and mid-sized businesses across various industries, including automotive, education, healthcare, and technology. Education is music to my ears. She founded Margaux and Associates in 2000 after serving as a corporate communications manager for a Japanese automotive supplier and Michigan's largest credit union. With a strong background in organizational communications, Margaret excels in storytelling and connecting clients with their target audiences, as well as opening doors to untapped markets. An accredited member of the Public Relations Society of America, APR, Margaret holds an MA in Public Relations and Organizational Communication from Wayne State University and a BA in German language and literature from Hendrix College. Wow, I love it. She also earned a graduate certificate in gerontology from Eastern Michigan University in 2017. Margaret's language studies and extensive travels enhances her cross-cultural communication skills, benefits clients with international business. She is dedicated to nonprofit work in Metro Detroit, having served as a chair of the Dearborn Area Chamber of Commerce, president of Dearborn Rotary, chair of the Henry Ford College Foundation, and a member of the Launch Detroit. Margaret has received numerous awards for public relations programming and was named Rotarian of the Year in twice in 2015 and in 2023, which I was actually present for. She is a proud mother and grandmother of a blended family in the US, Germany, and Sweden. Oh my goodness. Margaret, welcome to the program.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity. It's my first podcast.
Oh, amazing. Wow, I'm so happy that to have you as a first time here in the podcast, and it is so great to have you here, and I'm looking forward to learn so much from you about what you do. And before we get into this, I ask everyone that comes onto this program the same question. What is your philosophy in leadership?
Mm, that is, you think it would be an easy question to answer. It's a little bit difficult, but I think what I view as a leader is how to best build a team and how to inspire that team, how to select that team, and how to lead the team. So it's not about one person, one individual. It's using your skills to inspire and motivate, but also know what your own strengths are and know what the strengths of the people are that you select. I think that's really key because you can't do anything alone. You need a team, and it's all about having a team. Otherwise, there'd be too many leaders.
Wow. I think this is the first answer about leadership that I hear that actually talks about team building. And you're absolutely right. You need a team. You have to work with a team, but you have to empower that team. But before you can even do any of this, you have to find that potential and enrich the team in order to do what it is capable of doing. I love it.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you for this answer. So let's talk about what you're passionate in. Walk us through your journey from corporate communications manager to launching Margaux and Associates. Am I saying this right, Margaux? Margaux and
Yeah.
Associates? Awesome. And what were the key factors that influenced your decision to start your own firm?
Well, I enjoyed corporate communications, which is more internal communications than external. Although you do want to be aware of the community around you, and you want to bring information into the organization. You don't want the organization just sending out information. You want to pull in information and get the people within the organization to work together and have consistent messaging. So I enjoyed corporate communications. Actually, I learned a lot when I worked for the Japanese American subsidiary, and they actually paid for my master's degree in public relations. And my worked into my own position. I created my own position for corporate communications. They had never had somebody in that role. So I really created the position. And I got to a point where there was really nowhere else to go within the organization. at least here in the US. And so I decided to look elsewhere at what other some opportunities. And, you don't have to be confined to one industry. When you're in communications or public relations, you can work in a variety of industries because communications and envelops everyone. Public relations envelops everyone. In fact, the Japanese didn't have a word for public relations. So I had to explain what public relations is because that was not part of their vocabulary. And I actually did some training and education about how public relations, I did actually did my master's thesis on public relations in Japanese American subsidiaries and how that works. So I kind of moved away, and somebody else came to me from the financial industry and said, Margaret, we could really use you, in communications for our organization. And so I was interviewed and got the job. It was more of a marketing position that I came into, and more marketing communications, which is fine. And again, when I saw the size of the organization, I realized they didn't have anybody in corporate communications, and they really needed to be able to facilitate the communications because the organization had expanded, the number of members they had expanded, the number of locations. So it was really important. I felt an important role and one that I enjoyed. It's not that I don't like marketing, but marketing communications, after a while, how many things can you say about home equity loans and things like that? It's the same old products, and it's not that I'm not product oriented, but, it's more interesting to be in the role of public relations and corporate communications. And I got to a point where there was actually going to be a transition. There was going to be a change in leadership. And I did not see myself moving into one of those roles. So I decided to go out on my own. And it gave me more flexibility. I was at a point in my life where one of my daughters had already graduated from college. She was on her own. I was a single parent at the time. And, so financially, how do you jump out on your own? Well, one had already graduated, one was still in college, but I did something very risky. I sold my house.
Wow.
And I moved into a townhouse, and I used the equity from my house to start my business. All I needed was a printer, a computer, internet, and a phone line. And that's really what I needed in my brain, and started making connections and talking to people and giving out proposals. And it took me 9 months until I could pay myself a salary.
Wow. What an inspiration.
But that's what I did. I just jumped in. And, sometimes I thought, well, maybe I'll be a bag lady if this doesn't work. I didn't really know what was going to happen. I mean, it is a risk. I took a real risk, but I felt that I had the flexibility to do that. And again, my children were no longer in the home. They were getting more on their own.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt that I could do it. It was a leap. It was a real leap.
And when was that when you started Margaux and Associates?
Well, it was in actually probably in June, but I did take the month of June off and didn't start working until July.
Wow. So you're such an inspiration to want. I mean, hearing you tell this story, and I've heard this story before, and I felt like, wow. I mean, this lady right there could take this risk. And of course, it's not just the internet and the computer and the phone that you needed, right? You needed
right.
All your skill. Yes. And it's such a great story to hear. But, I want to jump back to I want to jump back to public relations, and I want you to start there and tell us what is it that you do in public relations? What does your firm do, and what do let's answer that question.
Well, I can do a lot of different things. It really depends on the client, what their needs are. For some clients, it's just marketing communications. For some, it's interaction with media, helping get more visibility out with media. In some cases, it's been crisis communications. So there's a lot of different facets that public relations can take. I have worked for franchises and help them with opening new stores and working with those individual franchise owners And I really kind of enjoyed that because you were kind of in training with those, or training those people how to start their businesses. And that's what I like about Launch Detroit, which is a Rotary sponsored program where we mentor entrepreneurs, and we provide business education, networking, and loans, micro loans, really, if they need it. And then, so I like that part of helping others start up. And public relations is really quite necessary when you're starting a new business because you don't have the money for advertising. Most people don't.
Mhm.
So, how do you get your word out? What do you do to spread the word? And so, using public relations, getting out there and networking, telling your story, getting testimonials on your website. You know, today, of course, using social media to your advantage in any way you can. Um, and they're just different avenues that you can use. At the time I started back in 2000, the social media really was not the connection. It was having a website helped, but putting out your strengths, what you were doing, what you could do to help them. But it was a lot of networking. It was a lot of building relationships with key people who could refer you. I think that's what you have to do. I've seen a lot of startups. It's really based on the personality of the person that's starting the business, the passion they have for it, and how much effort they're willing to put into it. You can't do it unless you're really passionate, motivated, and love what you do. And that comes across to other people. They see that you love what you're doing. Now, initially, when I went into public relations with a German background and French, I realized soon on I did not want to teach German or French. I'm not a teacher, but I do like to talk. And I do like to network with people. And so, what I did when I first started going back to school, I interviewed 3 public relations people. And all of them told me, you have to write. You have to be a good writer. So that's what I tell everybody. You have to be a good writer and you have to be a good listener. You have to listen to the people and find out what their goals are and what, their vision is. So it's a combination of listening skills, but also very good writing skills. And that is so helpful. And I think each person I interviewed, this was during a recession. I won't tell you how many years ago this recession was, but it was many years ago. And people weren't hiring. There was a job freeze. And so I called the vice president of DTE and interviewed him. Very helpful. I called a local agency and interviewed the head of the agency. And then I called a guy at Ford Motor Company who was like a VP of communications and interviewed him. And I said, what do I need to do? They said, and all of them said, oh, we can't hire you right now. And I said, I'm not looking for a job. Tell me about what I need to do in public relations. And their primary goal and their primary thing they told me was, you have to write. And when I was mentored before I started my own business, I talked to a man who was actually at the time he was treasurer of Ford Motor Company. He was a special guy. He made chocolate chip cookies, and we sat down over a glass of milk and chocolate chip cookies. And he told
Sounds
me,
good.
yeah, he told me that Margaret, just keep writing and get published, keep getting published. And so when my kids were very young, I wasn't the brownie mother. I wasn't the homeroom mother. I was the mother that volunteered to do the newsletter for the PTA. I was the one who put things together like that. I was not going to bake cookies and bring brownies and things like that, but I could write. And so I would collect their information. I would put it in the newsletter, and I would create the newsletter. And that's when you could do it on PageMaker and things like that, the old ways.
What is PageMaker? I'm just kidding.
Well, I
Oh,
really am old then.
oh wow. And this is actually when you and I talked last, I took the same advice that you gave me, and I started talking to other people who are or who have been in the same space as I am, and listening to how they started, and basically looking for tips and some ideas. And I just love that advice. And it's been really helpful. I was able to actually make a connection with someone who referred me to a company that is looking for a keynote speaker. And it and it's gonna trail on, and that is gold of an advice. And I appreciate that that I was first to hear about it and before anyone else in my audience. Thank you for that. And you kind of talked about it a little bit with for my next question. I wanted to ask you about your storytelling, but you're kind of, you got into it because you're such a great storyteller. And I wanted to know how you're using that. You have the other languages too. You have the different cultural background that you've got to offer. How has both of these want to call them gold features helped you in your business?
Well, I think it helps me explain who I am to others, but it helps me pull their stories out. And for example, I do work for an independent senior living community, and I tell the stories of the seniors. Well, when you tell the stories of the seniors, you're trying to attract people to move to that community. And people want to be near and they want to see people that look like them or sound like them, or I'd like to be their neighbor. I want to be their neighbor. And so I pull these stories out of seniors. Everybody's got a story. Everybody has a story, but especially when you're older, you've got millions of stories. But when you listen to these people, there becomes a common thread. So when people see that common thread that goes through their story, you can pull it together, you can tie it up in a bow, and you can make that senior so happy because you caught their personality, you caught their life, you showed it to the world. You had it published, you had testimonials put out, their friends read it, their family read it, and they were so pleased that somebody told their story. But not only that, the people who read the story or listened to the story realized that, wow, these are really nice people. These are really cool people. I'd like to live in their neighborhood. So it benefits the community, but it benefits the senior, and it benefits me. It benefits me because that's part of the aging process. And I'm old enough to move in there. I haven't offered to move in.
Oh, wow.
No, but
Wow.
I'm fascinated by seniors because that's a demographic that's rapidly changed. 70 is not 70 anymore. 70 is 50. 90 is maybe 70. There are people living in their hundreds. Even through the pandemic, I interviewed people that were over 100 years old. And so they survived it. They survived it. And one of my friends, her mother, who lives in another state, was in a community. She lived to be 104.
It's amazing.
And so they're just amazing stories out there. And it's so much fun to tell their stories.
Yeah. So
And
you're
they
not,
relate to me.
say that again?
I think they relate to me because I'm older too. And
Well,
I always tell them a funny story. And so that starts them talking.
I think humor gets everybody.
You have to be you
Yeah.
have to make them feel comfortable. So you
Yeah.
have to know what their comfort level is, you know.
So you're not only a good storyteller, but you know how to bring the good story out of others.
Right, right. There are some sad stories, but typically people don't like who wants to hear a sad story,
Yeah.
you know? Sometimes you do hear that, but it's not the height of the story. It's not the reason for the story. Their story is one of really success and
Mhm.
gratitude.
Yeah.
Really, a lot of
Yeah.
gratitude. Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, the sad story is for someone who wants to have a good cry, right? Those are helpful too. It brings out those emotions. But you're right, though. If you want to paint a picture of the I guess the successes and all of that, you're looking for those
Right.
the
And everybody has highs and lows, and they will share
yeah.
those lows. And and sometimes you can put that into the story, just to
Mhm.
show how somebody has succeeded during a difficult time. But mostly it's what makes them feel good, what they're proud of, and things like that. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. I love it. Can you maybe talk about I mean, other than storytelling, I'm looking for a different successful strategy that you've used to help you engage maybe employees or other key stakeholders in the communication process.
Well, they're different, especially in corporate communications. You can do what we call communication audits, and those are a process of going through different steps, how who's communicating with whom and how those communications flow through the organization. So there are things like that you can do. There's also some just team building that you can do, and team building exercises that you can do that help with communication so you understand the different styles of communication. I know you've used different tools to talk about different personalities, and those personality things help you understand how to communicate with people. So those are helpful pieces. Those are helpful. I'm not going to describe all the different names of tools like that, but yes, they're tools that you can use. And when I worked for the Japanese American subsidiary, I actually brought in cross-cultural consultants, and we actually spent 2 days. We went to a hotel off-site, and we spent 2 days playing different communication games. And we found out how the Americans and Japanese were missing in their communication styles. And so we were able to, I don't know if we corrected all of it, but we were able to understand each other better.
Wow, that is always interesting because especially when you've got another culture coming into the US or, vice versa, you've got differences that you have to come across that you have to understand the barriers before you can actually have successful communication. It's
Right.
really yeah. What about in the nonprofit sector? What are some of your initiatives in nonprofit and how has your involvement in there benefited some of the nonprofits here? I know you're very, very involved.
Mhm. I've One thing I try to do is connect businesses, especially small to mid-sized businesses, with nonprofits
Mhm.
because it's a way to help them spread the word about their business. It's a way to be involved and engaged in the community. It's a way to receive feedback
Yeah.
from what's going on in the community. So I always try to connect a business with a nonprofit, and that was very successful when I worked for a franchise. It was a hair franchise for men. It was a salon for men that was like an upscale barber shop, and they targeted men so you can get the nice facial massages and the hair done and all this. And so a natural target seemed to be if they were located in a military place where guys have to get regular haircuts, or they had a big presence, or the sports teams were around, or things like that. We might use upscale men's salon services. And this one franchisee who was located in San Diego, he had plenty of military around, but he also had a homeless center around the corner from where his barber shop was. So to open his barber shop, he actually brought in some of the homeless men and had the barbers that he was training, or in the business, to work on them and to set them up so they look great for job interviews.
Oh,
I
wow.
thought that was perfect. That was perfect. He didn't have to go to the military. He went around the block to this homeless shelter and helped these men spiff up, look good so they could find employment. And I think that's if you can do things like that and connect people, and find that, and that's why I really chambers help a lot. And a lot of smaller businesses, they need to look to their local chambers. Some chambers are stronger than others. So look around and find out which chamber works best for you. And it also is a great way to learn leadership skills. It's also a great way to become an ambassador for that chamber. That way you get to meet all the local businesses and the new businesses in particular that come into town and that you want to welcome into town because you're a business too. So I believe in chamber membership, and I believe that that was a way for me to provide leadership.
I love that. I love that story. It's so powerful. I love it when it's the purpose is humanistic. And I'm losing my voice, and I don't usually do that. but having using what you can to help others with that like that barbershop, that's amazing. I think that's the kind of stories we want to hear. Thank you for sharing that. I wanted to ask you about you're a very busy woman. Your work in your company and your involvement with your volunteer. I mean, I read all the descriptions of everything that you've been doing. How do you find balance between everything that you're doing, your business, your volunteer work, and your own personal life and your maybe you time for your family, time for other connections, for you, for yourself? How do you do that?
It's hard. It's very difficult. And the trick is not to get so intense in your work or even in your volunteer work that you don't burn out. And it can happen. It can happen. And I won't say that I haven't come close to it, but it is something that you have to work on. And I'm a higher energy person. So, but I realize how important my health is. So I go to the gym 3 or 4 mornings a week. And I do things like that. I make sure that I take care of myself physically, mentally, and emotionally. I have no problem going to a social worker when I'm trying to work through an issue. And what happens when you work with a social worker, you talk it out. They ask good questions and let you hear yourself. And they'll say, "Do you know what you just said? Can you repeat that?"
Mm.
And so I believe in mental health. And I will tell you, when I started my own business, we had an employee assistance program, and you could get 5 free visits that you didn't have to pay for with a social worker. So I didn't tell anybody. I just spaced them out like 2 weeks apart before I quit my job and started my own business. I,
Wow.
I don't know if I should tell people that, but I think it worked, because I didn't want to burden my family. I didn't want my kids to worry. I didn't want my mom to worry, you know, and I didn't want to necessarily talk it out with them. I wanted to talk it out with somebody who could be objective and didn't know me any other way but talking to me. She didn't know what I did for a job or any work or anything else. She just listened to me, who I was and what motivated me. So I think talking with, if somebody said, "Have you ever talked to a social worker about that?" I would say, sure, go ahead, try. I mean, if you feel like you need some help, mental help, if you feel like emotionally something is burdening you, I think get help. It's like going to a doctor, you know, or if
Yeah.
you want to go to a beauty shop, you want something done to your hair, go to the beauty shop. So it's all of the same. It's all the same thing. Just take care of yourself. Take good care of yourself, and you will have time. You will make time for your family and for those friends that you've created. I have friends that have been around for more than 50 years, and it's 60 years, and it's wonderful to be able to get together. And that's what the pandemic did. It brought us together on Zoom. The worst part was I got a Zoom neck. I couldn't turn my head after a while. But I started Zooming with women that I went to college with. And I heard their stories that I never heard in the years between college and now.
Mm.
And there were amazing stories.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
And we, yeah.
I love what you said about taking that burden and unburdening yourself with a social worker or mental health specialist, someone who can be objective. I think that's great advice. I do want to ask for one last advice. Our time is run out, but I while I have you, one last advice maybe that you could give to small business owners, somebody who's doing a startup, solopreneurs who have so much going on, that they're doing everything on their own. What advice would you give them to, that'll maybe help relieve some of the tension that they're feeling?
Tackle what they do best and try to find assistance in some way, whether it's a family member or somebody else. to help you with the things that you don't do well. And maybe it's accounting. Well, if you can't keep track of your bills, you don't know how much you're making and how much you're spending, and that can be a real problem. So, find people that can help you with that. Um, so, you have to be willing to spend some money, but you also can make, instead of using and trying advertising, you don't have the money to spend on advertising, try public relations, and that could be hosting an event that's affordable for you. It's having other people write testimonials about the things that you do, about your products and services. They can do that on Google, they can do it on social media, they can do it on your website. Make sure you get their full names though. Don't just say anonymous or somebody said. You have to put some credibility to it. But go on LinkedIn, go on some of these business networking groups, join a business networking group if that will help you. Join a chamber. I think the chamber is a good place to start. And the chamber will write up a little bio when you join. They'll write up a little spot about your business and they'll put it out there. And you can have a grand opening or a business opening if you're retail. So there are things like that you can do. But to minimize your costs. There are costs to doing business, and you just have to realize that that's going to come. But don't go cheap on stuff. Make it, and I don't mean cheap, just looking, but just make it a good experience for the people who participate.
What a great, I mean, I, I'm glad I'm getting this on video. I'm recording this. This is great advice. There's so much wealth in what you just said. Because as an entrepreneur myself, and I know a lot of my friends who are. There's that struggle of how do you get stuff done yourself, and everything is so expensive, and you're just starting out. There's so much to spend. This is a wealth of information. Thank you so much for not just this, but sharing your story and talking to us about bringing your knowledge here. I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Nago, man. I'm just so excited for you and what you're doing. I'm looking forward to learning more.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And thanks for watching Lead with MCAN. We'll see you the next episode.